Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Capoch+Hera+MarineLord versus AoE4, Sorakuma, Demon Sheep, and Siamjik. In just a matter of seconds, we'll jump into game number 1 on Dry Arabia. Hera is going to be playing French, Capoch will be playing English, and MarineLord will be playing as the Rus. Whereas on the other side, Siamjik will be playing as the Rus, Demon Sheep as the French, and Sorakuma as the Abbasid dynasty. Welcome to game number 1. On the left side of the map, we will have Capoch+Hera, a meme that was born when Capoch played a show match versus Hera in AoE4 and beat him 4-0. We will have Hera in the pocket playing as the French in blue. To the north of him, quite far away from his teammate, is going to be MarineLord playing as the Rus in yellow. And last but not least, down south of Hera's base, we will have Capoch playing as the red with the English. Right side of the map, we will have Sorakuma as an Abbasid flank in purple. In the pocket, we will have Demon Sheep playing as the French in green. And last but not least, Rus for Siamjik in teal. So the only difference between the two teams is that you will have an Abbasid flank over an English flank. This is something that can be debated a lot, but I think the biggest point when it comes to the Abbasid versus English flank is that the Abbasids can make siege weapons with their archers once they move up. So if they manage to get some sort of map control or some sort of momentum, they can easily turn that into destroyed buildings and potentially steamroll one opponent. That's probably the best reason why Abbasids could make some sense here. But I do believe that the English have a better early game potential, so I would probably prefer English over the Abbasids here, especially with Sorakuma being so far away from his teammates. This is going to be a pretty difficult thing to pull off for him. In the pockets, we will have French for both players, likely going to see some professional scouts gameplay. Definitely from Hera, we are yet to see if Demon Sheep is going to do that, especially given the fact that we have two Rus players on the battlefield. And when you have two Rus players, they will play professional scouts as well. So the amount of hunt that the players will be able to get is somewhat limited. The two Rus players will be making a run for it. Your opponent's pocket is likely going to make a run for it. So you might just think, okay, I'm not going to play professional scouts. I'm just going to play knights straight away and get a military advantage. That's always an option here for the French. Nice, beautiful gold mine at the back here for Demon Sheep. Looking at the bounty situations, that's the first thing that we'll have to observe. MarineLord is at 150 bounty as things stand, and his counterpart, Siamjik, is going to be sitting at 175. So sort of head-to-head in the bounty department are the two Rus players, both of them moving to the north first, take down the patches of Huntables. In a 3v3 matchup where you have two Rus players, you're aiming for about 380, 400 bounty. As things stand, MarineLord is going to bring in two Wolves, that's going to give him 50. And of course, you still have a ton of Huntables near your allies and the opponents as well, so you're going to go for those as well. You see, Siamjik is taking down his teammates' hunts, and the same thing can be seen here by MarineLord. He already finished off with the hunts of Capoch and Hera. Looking at the hunting cabin, which is always a nice little touch to the economy of the Rus. It's 22 gold per minute for Siamjik, 20 for MarineLord. A tiny bit more effective for Siamjik, but the difference is pretty much non-existent. As things stand, we will have the Golden Gate coming in with 4 villagers for Siamjik, and for MarineLord, he's a little later with the Golden Gate, and I do believe that he doesn't have enough sheep next to his town center. Some of the villagers simply can't fit on the sheep because there is not enough space over there. And in general, once that carcass runs out, I think MarineLord is going to have some food issues. So at this point, he needs to bring in some sheep, or he needs to have one of his teammates bring some sheep for him, because he might run out of food under his town center, and that's exactly what happens. Runs out of food underneath the town center, so he's going to have to move out, do some lumberjacking, or potentially rush up the Golden Gate. There are still options for him. I think the most reasonable thing to do is just to send out lumberjacks, because you're going to be selling wood anyways, and instead of having lumberjacks on the wood line throughout feudal age so that you have wood to sell, you just send these villagers out right now, and once you have some sheep under your town center, you would just pull everybody. So there's always that option. Looks like MarineLord has to go for the hunting cabin close to the berries though, which is far from ideal. Not something that you love to do with the Rus. You just want to focus on the hunt and the sheep. You don't really want to go for the berries early, especially because the hunting cabin is quite expensive. It's 100 food a piece, so you don't really want to go for that on the berries, unless absolutely necessary, like it is in this case. Scouts coming in here from Sorakuma, harassing the gold miners of Hera a tiny bit, but minimal damage is done, and Hera is opening with scouts, so professional scouts is on the way for him. MarineLord yet to reach feudal age, Whereas Siamjik is already in feudal, and we do have professional scouts coming in for our teal player here. In the other pocket, we have a second stable coming in for Demon Sheep, and he's opening with knights. No mill for him, so he's not gonna play professional scouts. He's gonna go full-on army mode as he's looking to get some kills on the scouts of MarineLord. Samjik is at 400 bounty, 495 it is for MarineLord. So for MarineLord, he's just now cracking that level 3 bounty. That is a very, very nice amount of bounty that was able to acquire. Down south, Capoch is up to feudal age already, massing longbows back at home, going for the defensive tower on his lumberjacking line as well. Makes some sense to do that, because this is going to expand your network of castles bonus all the way out here, and it will protect your lumberjacks as well for a long time. What is the Abbasid player doing though? Because that's one of the bigger questions at this point. We do have multiple houses coming in right next to the gold mine. This seems to be intentional, and probably the idea is that you want to create a narrow choke point, so it's a little more difficult for knights to get a good surround on your villagers when you're mining gold. Because if you just have a wide open side like that, the knights can jump on it from one side and get a good surround. With houses all around, it's a little more difficult to get a good surround there. That's probably the theory behind this one for Sorakuma, who's going for double archer ranges, and it's going to be camel archers. Now, the camel archers is an intriguing idea over here because it does two things. A, it does counter the horse archers of your opponent. B, it also has a ton of mobility. So you can have a very fast moving army if you think about it. Your Rus player has horse archers, your pocket has knights, and you have camel archers. So all of your army is very fast moving. You can disengage from any fight you wish to, as compared to Capoch's army that's kind of slow moving. On the other hand, the longbows, especially early on, will be way more powerful than the camel archers, because camel archers are extremely expensive. 180 food apiece is just very difficult to afford with the Abbasid's early game. Once you get the fresh foodstuffs upgrade, it's a little easier, but even then, the Abbasid camel archers for an early game economy is always hard to pick up. Camel archers now moving in though from Sorakuma, and this is the first time that they are going to hit Hera's gold miners. Hera might lose the first knight in this fight. Indeed, the knight is going to get picked off, and the second knight is about to get killed as well. Remember, Hera went for scouts at the beginning, so he has lower knight numbers than his opponent. And as things stand, those camel archers could do quite a lot of damage. This knight only at 3 HP. The camel archers could finish it off. Capoch pursuing with the longbowman for a time being. I think Hera wants to kill that low HP camel archer, and ultimately the knight gets traded for the camel archer. Hera is still ferrying in the air, but as you see, Capoch is pursuing that camel archer with longbows, so the lack of mobility for his army is showing here, even though he could have picked off this camel archer right now that he was close to it. Some more camel archers slowly trickling in here for Sorakuma. Hera did lose one villager on his gold mine, also lost a couple of knights. But what I really love is this scout being positioned here for Sorakuma. It gives him so much vision, and that information is so valuable for Demon Sheep, who is looking to put up pressure on the gold mine of Hera. At this point, probably the plan is that you are going to have a Rus player that will just 1v1 MarineLord. And then behind that one, you will have a 2v2 with Abbasids and French versus English and French. As long as Capoch's archers are in here, the camel archers won't be able to do much, so this is a time frame where you want to switch targets. You want to start hitting Capoch's base, because his army is going to be a little slow catching up. A couple of knights coming in here from Samjik, not something you see every day from Rus. That's going to delay his castle age, but this could give a nice momentum for Kaio or Fallen. Knights from Hera slowly being picked off by the camel archers, and the longbows are also being ground down by the knights. Nice micro from Capoch to focus down the camel archers. Those are the units that he needs to focus on, but as things stand, the knight numbers are way better for Kaio Fallen, and Hera is going to lose control over his gold mine over here. Longbows getting pushed all the way back into the base of Hera. And remember, those extra knights from Samjik weren't super expensive. This will mean that MarineLord beats him to castle age, but I feel like the reward is there already for Kaio Fallen. They managed to push Hera off from gold, they managed to pick off quite a lot of longbows from Capoch, and behind this one, the camel and archer numbers are slowly increasing, because the most exposed time you have with the Abbasids against longbows is this early game scenario, when you don't have a ton of camel archers. Early longbows could hurt you quite heavily, but since Capoch isn't really able to use them, the camel archers pay off quite nicely over here for Kaio Fallen. MarineLord already up to castle age though, going for relics, whereas for Siamjik, he is going up right now, and he's going up with the high trade house. This is something that Siamjik has done yesterday, I do believe. In that case, he was faster to Castle Age than his opponent, though. So the idea here is that you're going up with the high trade house because that's going to guarantee you a very, very nice influx of gear and a gold from the bounty as well. But of course, you will have to make a monastery for Relic collection. Knights charging here from Demon Sheep, jumping on top of those archers. Quite a lot of archers in this group here from Capoch, so he might be able to hold against just 3 knights. And I feel like this might have been an overextension here from Demon Sheep. Demon Sheep trying to pull away his weak knights, but ultimately, he's going to lose considerable numbers. This wasn't a great fight for him at all. So, as things stand, it's very likely that Siamjik is going to drop a monastery and he's just going to start collecting relics with that. Obviously, the biggest drawback that you're suffering from is that with a monastery, your warrior monks are twice as expensive. So it's very difficult to afford the early warrior monks. And if it's difficult to afford them, it's going to be difficult to collect relics. And that means that MarineLord could get ahead in terms of relic collection. Looks like we also do not have any horse archers coming in from Siamjik. He's going very heavy on the knights department. You see, there is already a stable up and a second stable behind. There is the monastery for Siamjik. So, at this point, I don't think that he can hope to have more relics than MarineLord. What you need to hope for is that MarineLord doesn't have a lot more than you do. And then just leverage the fact that you could pretty much 2 versus 3 this one right now, because that's exactly what we're seeing. Quite a big force from Capoch in here, though, and with the extra range of those longbowmen, they can pick off the camel archers quite easily. Knights trading off against each other for the time being, MarineLord and Siamjik being the only players in Castle Age right now. And I think this would be the time to potentially hit the MarineLord's base, because you see Hera's knight numbers aren't spectacular here if you compare it to the opponent's knight numbers. And Capoch's army is a little slow, so it will take some time for Capoch to catch up and help MarineLord out here. As things stand, Castle Age Knight upgrade should come in any moment for our Teal player, and indeed, we already have the Castle Age Knights in. So those are probably the most powerful unit on the battlefield right now, but once the Cav Archers hit the field, that's going to be different, and it looks like Hera's scouts will get intercepted in the middle, so Hera won't be able to pick up this patch of Huntables. MarineLord is also coming in for this, but Sorakuma could pick off a couple of scouts. MarineLord looks like he might be able to yoink the Huntables at this point. Indeed, Camel Archers will try to pursue, but MarineLord is driving them into a trap, and that was absolutely beautiful. Lured them into the Longbowman fire, now Horse Archers are moving out, and this is the biggest problem, I think, at this point for Siamjik. I agree with the fact that you can age up with the High Trade House because it does have a very, very nice gold trickle. 126 gold per minute is nothing to be ashamed of. But going for double stable knights is a little bit of a surprising choice here, I would say. And now you see he's transitioning to horse archers in a delayed fashion. I think the biggest problem with that is that knights are difficult to afford, especially if you're doing a fast castle. Knights are a lot more expensive than horse archers are. So fast castle horse archers, part of the reason why it's so powerful is because your army is quite cheap. You can afford 3 archer range production quite easily. MarineLord already on 3 relics. Siamjik currently on 1. Looks like the knights and the horse archers are heading towards the base of Sorakuma. Sorakuma does have a sizable force of camel archers to defend against with, but once Capoch arrives at the longbows, this is going to be difficult to hold, because the longbows can just pick apart all those camel archers. Meanwhile, though, we do have a couple of knights raiding the base of MarineLord. MarineLord, with a decent amount of horse archers, should be able to scare these away, and he's coming in with relic number 4 already. I really feel like the knight play isn't paying off so far for Siamjik as things stand. Knights now in for Demon Sheep, though. That's something that we haven't talked about. Hera is still in Feudal Age, Demon Sheep is in Castle Age, so Demon Sheep has veteran Royal Knights on the battlefield, which should be able to clean this force up, especially if it's supported by Camel Archers. For now, you have 1 battering ram, and the archer range is already under attack. Bit of a troublesome spot for Sorakuma to be in, but if they pay patient, they might be able to take a decisive fight over here. It's 3 versus 2 right now. You only have green knights over here, a couple of camel archers, only 3 teal knights coming in from Siamjik to reinforce. Meanwhile, some of them are slowly trickling in, and somewhat surprisingly, Siamjik, who is the highest rated player when it comes to 1v1 ladder performance, I feel like he's underperforming a tiny bit. Because as things stand, there is only 1 relic under his control. He decided to go for the double stable knights approach, but it so far isn't really paying off. And now they're paying the price for that because their military presence is just not there, and Sorakuma is going to start losing buildings because of that. still, Sorakuma could just try to slow this one down, buy himself some time for Castle Age. He did lose his archer ranges, but now that he's in Castle Age, he can grab the Camel Archer upgrade, he can grab the Blacksmith upgrades if he wants to, so suddenly his force is going to be a lot more powerful. But of course, behind this one, I wouldn't be surprised to see Hera going into Castle Age as well and grabbing the Venerable Knights soon. Looks like this is the moment that they decide to take this fight. Decent amount of Knights out here for Siamjik, and those forces, that might be enough for the Taiwanese team to clean this one up. Beautiful micro by Capoch, and just a beautiful move from Hera's team to have a meat shield in front of those longbowmen, prevent the Knights from hitting them, because that's exactly what you want to accomplish. Avoid the Knights hitting the longbowmen, and as things stand, that's working out. The Knights are just unable to touch the longbowmen, but slowly but surely, Hera's cavalry gets ground down by the Castle Age Camel Archers, some Horse Archers, and the Castle Age Knights as well, and now it starts to become a cleanup. The Camel Archers perform quite well against the Horse Archers here. MarineLord's Cav Archers are being pushed back, and behind this one, the Knights are slowly grinding down those longbowmen. At this point, I feel like for Siamjik's team, it is essential that they don't let those longbows escape. As things stand, they're looking to destroy that force of Horse Archers, and they're actually doing that in a very nice fashion. But I think if those Knights turn around, they could kill the longbowmen, because the longbowmen are still there, and it's a fairly big mass at this point. Looking at Castle Ages, there is only 2 players that are still in Feudal Age, Capoch and Hera, and that's a disturbing sign, because as things stand, they're up against 3 players in Castle Age, and that technology advantage is still going to show. MarineLord won't be able to hold off Horse Archers and Camel Archers alone, despite the fact that he does have a whopping 5 relics for him, as opposed to his opponent having 2. Three sacred sites under the control of MarineLord though, so the sacred site victory actually begins for them. Countdown will finish at 2640, but I feel like it's not something that's completely relevant, because I'm fairly certain that some of these sacred sites could be neutralized so easily. Still, if you look at MarineLord's gold income, that's very good. It's 5 relics and 3 sacred sites working for him, so that's the biggest problem I believe for Siamjik. He's down 3 relics over his Rus counterpart, and that's just not a good sign. He's also making a mixture of Knights and Horse Archers instead of pure Horse Archers, which I'm not sure if it's the good decision or not. Might work out when there is so many longbows though, so that's something that you gotta consider. Capoch now up to Castle Age, he's got veteran longbows, but there's a big force of Knights coming in from Demon Sheep. Demon Sheep needs to destroy that ball of longbows, because that's getting dangerous. That big ball of longbows can easily snap down the Camel Archers, the Horse Archers. Camel Archers also coming in to support, some Knights also pursuing, but here comes the force of MarineLord and Hera. And even though Hera only has a couple of Feudal Age Knights over here, those will still be good to just absorb the damage in front of those longbowmen and let the longbows do the work. A Monk also coming in here for MarineLord. He might try to get a Vololo going. You see, it's actually sandwiched in between that army. Here comes the Vololo attempt, trying to get that one, but it's going to be picked off by the Horse Archers. Still, decisive victory for MarineLord's team here. Just so many Cav Archers on the battlefield, so many longbows. This is the biggest problem at this point for Kiowa Fallen. They're just unable to take down that force of longbowmen. Capoch, the moment he is disengaging from any fight, he's healing up his forces. And this army, with the Warrior Monk also carrying the Relic out there, and of course the Horse Archers, feels more and more difficult to stop. MarineLord, I think, just got too much out of that Castle Age compared to Siamjik. Siamjik needed to put more emphasis on collecting relics and less emphasis on Knight, I think, because ultimately the biggest problem for them is that they don't have the Cav Archer numbers to match up against MarineLord's ones. And of course, the other problem is that the Camel Archers can't perform at a good level when there are so many longbows there to pick them off. Horse Archers now moving in. Sorakuma losing villager number 1, villager number 2. And we have a defensive tower coming in here for him for some vision, for some firepower. But now, their army numbers aren't looking spectacular. So if you look at Siamjik, it's 32 army, 56 for MarineLord. Only 10 army for Hera, and he's quite a bit on the back foot, to be honest. But he managed to absorb a lot of damage from the opponent's army, and that just let MarineLord and Capoch do the rest of the work. So part of the reason why Hera's army is so small is because Hera is deliberately sacrificing his knights so that his opponent's or his teammates' army survives. And that is a pretty decent move, I would say, from him. He doesn't need those knights that much if the Horse Archers and the Longbowmen survive, and they just form one big ball, I would say. That's a big force. Now ready to push the base of Sorakuma. Double rams with the support of about 20 cav archers as well. 50 veteran longbowmen also out here. And only a handful of camel archers are here to defend against this one. This feels like an impossible hold at this point for Sorakuma. And with the Abbasids, you only gotta lose the Town Center and the House of Wisdom to lose the game. So losing these two landmarks means game over. Unless we're seeing a massive ball of units coming in here from Demon Sheep and Siamjik to relieve this pressure, I feel like this game might be over. Ooh. Chat is saying there was a Vololo somewhere, but I'm not sure if it actually succeeded, because Vololos are usually very unlikely to succeed on a pro level. I've never seen a good Vololo working out so far. Ultimately, there's a lot of things going on at the same time, and I'm fairly certain that the players are focused on this one. At this point, there is still one warrior monk somewhere for MarineLord with a relic. He has it over here. He actually probably converted 3 villagers, because there is a 3 villagers making a tower here. What probably happened was that he made an attempt to convert the villagers on the wood line, ultimately managed to get free. That's going to be annoying, but ultimately, this warrior monk is gonna get picked off on the left side. Though, this is the big deal. This is the big deal. You have an enormous fight coming in here with the Rams pushing the town center. Horse archers trying to hold this one off, but with the Rams absorbing so much arrow fire and the numbers being so much greater for MarineLord's team, this feels like an extremely difficult hold. And once again, the biggest problem for AoE4 is that those longbows are completely untouched, and they just grow and grow in numbers. They deploy their paling, so cavalry charge isn't likely against them either anymore, and they can just pick off those horse archers, those camel archers from a distance. The camel archers play would work a lot better if the opponent didn't have such a huge mass of longbowmen, but that just never was a possibility at this point. Capoch was able to mass those longbows, and he barely lost any numbers in all of those fights. He did a very, very good job keeping those alive. The starting town center of Sorakuma is gone, and if this House of Wisdom goes down, he's going to get eliminated from the game. There is just no army to stop this anymore. So even with all this economy all the way back here, that just seems very unlikely, because currently Hera's team has a way larger army working for them, and it looks like Hera, Capoch, and MarineLord will take game number 1. Sorakuma taps out before he would get defeated, and indeed, Sorakuma, Siamjik, and Demon Ship resign. MarineLord was able to mass horse archers very easily, and he got to 5 relics, 3 sacred sites. I feel like Siamjik, even though you can justify the high trade house play to a certain extent, it only works if you are the one that gets to Castle Age the first. If you're slow to Castle Age, or if you also have a Rus opponent, then you want to go for the Abbey of the Trinity, because you want to race for those relics. It wasn't really a race, more like a domination for MarineLord. He was able to grab most of the relics, obviously allowing him to field a much larger army of horse archers, and the camel archers could never take a good fight simply because the ball of longbowmen was just so big from Mr. Capoch. If you look at his army graph for Capoch, after minute 17, he basically lost no army for the majority of the game, minimal casualties, and he was able to build up an army as big as 70. So really, at the end of the day, 81 kills, 50 deaths. Hera's KD is massively negative, but we talked about this one. The idea for Hera was that he's sacrificing his army so that MarineLord and Capoch don't lose their big groups of archers and horse archers. And with that, Hera's team takes game number 1. Quite decisive, I would say. Very convincing game from them. Strategy was a little questionable from AoE4, and especially the choice to go high trade house and then not really put a lot of emphasis on the relics, go for a combination of knights and horse archers instead of just pure horse archers. But I think in the end, the English have proven that they're probably a slightly better pick as a flank civilization in 3v3s than the Abbasids are. Looking at the home maps, it is going to be Hill and Dale, a map that has the tendency to go very long, This is going to be an interesting one because I feel like AoE4 is going to be a lot more confident on maps that are closed and slower paced, because in late game I think the two teams are rather even, but in early game the early game execution is probably slightly better for Capoch's team, so I think it's the right choice for them. Danube River could have been an option as well for them, but most definitely not Highview. Highview is another open map where I think that Capoch's team is the favorite. Still, I feel like, given the fact that Capoch's team performed so well on this Arabia setting, I would be very surprised not to see them go for Highview in game number 1, should the team of Sorakuma win this. So we're going to the home map of AoE4 here, which is going to be the Illandale. Civilization draft already in, and we have a mirror. Chinese, Holy Roman Empire, and Mongols are going to be the civilizations for Demon Sheep, Marine Lord. Both teams going for the same civilizations here, and they actually pick them in the very same order as well. So you see the priorities: Chinese being such a powerful civilization with the Fire Lancers, the Bombards in the end, then Holy Roman Empire, your economic juggernaut, a civilization that does have an infantry flood, although the spearmen cannot brace, so it's always tricky to use them in a Fire Lancer situation. And then Mongols, a civilization that has so much flexibility. It can put up a ton of early pressure, forcing the opponents to wall early, to potentially go for a defensive approach at the beginning of the game, or they also have a very powerful late game. So, a lot of options over here. They are jumping into game number 2. As we speak, we're going to have a couple moments of spec countdown, so we will be back with game number 2 in about 3 minutes. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Capoch and MarineLord alongside Hera versus Sorakuma, Demon Sheep, and Siamjik. We're jumping into Hillandale very soon. They did have to restart the game because apparently the positions were wrong for the teams. They cannot easily pick positions in the lobbies. The only way that they can do that is by joining in the lobbies in a specific order, but sometimes that doesn't really work out that well. There is some bugs with that. But anyways, you can already see the civilizations on the screen, and you can also see which player will pick which civilization. So even in the case of restarts, the players are not allowed to change whoever uses a certain specific civilization. So it is going to be Hera controlling the Holy Roman Empire. Capoch will have the Mongols, and MarineLord will have the Chinese. Whereas on the other side, Siamjik is going to have the Mongols, Demon Sheep has the Chinese, and Sorakuma has the Holy Roman Empire. So, looking at the civilizations here, I think it's fairly obvious what we're going to see from two out of these three civilizations. Holy Roman Empire love to say and go for a fast Imperial, and then go just boom with the Alspach or the Pass of Schwabia. Obviously, during that, they have to start collecting relics as well, so some sort of map presence could be very nice from the Mongol ally. If the Mongol ally is able to go for a fast castle into Lancers, that could support the relic collection of the Holy Roman Empire player quite a bit. The Chinese player is likely going to play a 2-town center, potentially even 3-town center Song Dynasty boom, and then go straight into Yuan Dynasty and go Fire Lancers. Just the usual play with the Chinese. If you go anything other than Fire Lancers with the Chinese in today's meta, that's basically just a waste of the Chinese civilization, Fire Lancers being so powerful. Mongols, that's I think the wild card for each of these teams, because the Mongols can play very aggressive at the beginning of the game. They can play super aggressive with the scouts, try to prevent walling, and then put up some aggression with towers. You can go for professional scouts if you want to, you can go for a fast castle style play. But what I would love to see is an aggressive opening with spears and towers, because that could slow down the opponent, and we have seen that being done multiple times. Having one player move forward and delay 2 free opponents, because with a forward tower situation before the opponent's walls go up, you can potentially delay the Holy Roman Empire player's castle age timing, you can delay the boom of the Chinese player, and just carve out an advantage for your own Chinese and Holy Roman Empire players. So that's probably the game plan here for either of these teams. I think, especially for AoE4 being down 1 game, they have to be the ones initiating such a move. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Siamjik moving forward with the Mongols, whereas we'll have to see if Capoch will try something similar with the Mongols, or he's just going to play professional scouts into a boom. The big question as well is what the Mongols will do in terms of unit composition. In late game, there are a ton of options, and Mangudai is one of those appealing options in late game. They're quite expensive, but they retain their value very nicely, and Mangudai could be a pretty decent answer to Fire Lancers if you can keep controlling them. You can always run away from the Fire Lancers and just keep shooting as you run away, so it might be a reasonable solution against the Fire Lancers to go for Mangudai, or just spam Spearman. That's the alternative. Because the Mongols do have access to the brace on their Spearman, it's not bugged, and because of that, you can just spam Spearman and deal with the Fire Lancers. Any Spearman that is capable of bracing will perform quite nicely against the Fire Lancers, because the Fire Lancers only get their blast damage, their area damage, when the charge is completed. So Spearmen that cannot brace, like Holy Roman Empire or Delhi Spearmen, will struggle quite badly, but Spearmen that can will perform much better against Fire Lancers. With that being said, after the restart, we do have the second game coming in. We do have a spec countdown, but we already see the civilizations. So Mongols, Holy Roman Empire, and Chinese. We discussed what these civilizations are capable of. I think this is gonna come down to small decisions. Whether or not either of these teams will go for a couple of combat units in Castle Age, like a couple of knights, for example, from the Mongol player, if he decides to go for a fast castle, or a couple of knights from the Holy Roman Empire player, and carve out a relic lead. That could be a quite interesting point to talk about, and that's something that could be a difference maker, having 1 or 2 extra relics for your team. Obviously, the minimal required amount of relics will be free, so that you can get your landmark working appropriately. I completely forgot the name of the HRE landmark, which is a little embarrassing, but you guys will probably help me out with that. It's basically the only landmark. It's the only landmark that the HRE go for in Castle Age. Regnitz Cathedral is the name. My brain is melting down right now, but obviously you want to have at least 3 relics for yourself so that your Regnitz Cathedral works at full capacity. But any more relics that you can acquire could be a very nice addition. So either for the HRE player, just placing it into a monastery, or any other teammates having that in a monastery is going to be a pretty nice extra. So you obviously want to race for those relics a tiny bit. You will have some sort of competition for the huntables, I would say. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Mongol players doing quite a lot of deer ferrying going on. So, a lot of things to think about. We have 3 minutes before the game starts. So get yourself ready, because Hera, Capoch, and MarineLord are about to face Kyle Fallen in game number 2 in a matter of seconds. Alright, welcome back everybody to Capoch, Hera, MarineLord versus Kyle Fallen. The teams have not changed. There is a backup player for Kyle Fallen. Alongside Siamjik, Demon Sheep, and Sorakuma, there is Max 005 as well, but we haven't seen him play a single time in this tournament so far. So we'll have to see if he ever steps in, because as things stand, his team is down 1 game. If they lose this one, they're out of the tournament in the round of 16th, whereas Capoch, Hera, and MarineLord would march into the quarterfinals. One of the strongest teams in the tournament. We will have to see how they perform in this game. This is definitely one of the maps where their strengths don't show that much, because it's a slower paced game, a lot more macro focused, a lot more late game focused, as compared to open maps like Arabia or Highview. So this is definitely a map where Sorakuma, Demon Sheep, and Siamjik will have a good shot at taking a win. The biggest problem for them will be that even if they take this win, it's going to be a little difficult to pull off a victory on what is most likely going to be Highview for Hera's team in game number 3, because Hera's team likely prefers an open map over these closed or slower maps. I would be very surprised if Hera, Capoch, and MarineLord would pick the other alternative, which would be Danube River for game number 3 during the qualifiers. So it's very likely we're going to see Highview in game number 3, and that should be favoring Hera's team. But first, we have to get there. The step 1 for Siamjik's team is going to be winning this game. We're ready to roll in 30 seconds. This game could have started like 5 minutes ago if there wasn't a restart, but sometimes things happen. Obviously, once the game improves when it comes to team game quality of life features like position picking, it's going to be a lot less time in between games to set them up. But since many of the infrastructure that is needed for a team game tournament is not implemented that well into the game yet, sometimes we have slightly longer breaks like this. But with all of that being said, it is time to jump into game number 2. On the left side, we will have Hera's team with MarineLord playing as the purple Chinese. Hera's going to be in the pocket playing as the Holy Roman Empire in blue. And on the flank, we will have Capoch playing as the Mongols in teal. Meanwhile, very much spread out is the team of Sorakuma. On the far right of the map, we'll have Sorakuma playing as the green in the Holy Roman Empire. The pocket is going to be the Mongol player Siamjik in red. And to the northernmost part of the map, it is going to be Demon Sheep in yellow. What an awkward map generation this is. You see, the players for Sorakuma's team are a lot more spread out. Now, does that hurt them that much? I don't think so, because you're going to be walling yourself off anyways, and it's not the Mongol player being very far out, so that should be fine for them. If the Mongol player was all the way out here, this would be a little more problematic because the Mongols can't war themselves, so they need someone to help them out with. So you're expecting Demon Sheep to send villagers out here to war this crossing, but also this one, and likely even this one. Whereas on the far right, you're going to have Sorakuma walling. It looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 entrances to the hill of Demon Sheep's team. Whereas on the other side, you have 1, 2, 3, only 4 entrances on Hera's side. Although, truth being told, one of the entrances for Demon Sheep's team is quite small. So, relatively even map over here. Maybe slightly more well defendable for Hera's team. You do have a Khan aggroing a wolf accidentally. This is not intentional, but the Khan is firing at every enemy that gets in his line of sight. So obviously, once he spots a wolf, he's going to take it down. Nice amount of keep following that Khan for the time being. So with no Rus out here, obviously you're not racing for a hunt. You can just take your time. Start off with your own hunt if you're MarineLord and the Chinese, supervising that mill, and that's going to give you a very nice food economy at the beginning with all those hunters. On the other side, the Chinese player, Demon Sheep, is doing something similar. He actually has the deer right next to the berries, which is a very, very convenient arrangement. So he can get the deer going, and then once he's depleting them, he's going to move towards the berries. It is going to be a supervised mill as well, so very nice food economy going as well for Demon Sheep. For Samjik, he does have a gur on that gold mine. This gur is also nice and convenient because it's right next to the hunt. So whenever Samjik runs out of sheep underneath his town center, he can just send out villagers and take this hunt with the wheels and drop it off at the gur. On the far right side, we do have the gold miners of Sorakuma being empowered, and I do believe the Aken Chapel is already coming up. That's going to be a beautiful Aken Chapel spot, supervising the gold and the lumberjacks as well. It will be able to affect the hunters to a certain extent. So if you place a mill here, that would work very nicely. In general, a mill here would be great, because later on you will be adding farms, and those will be in the influence radius of the Aken Chapel as well. So when it comes to setting up your eco, one thing that you want to consider is that you want to leave some space around your Aken Chapel so you can place farms there in the future. Down south, for Capoch, he has a pretty decent arrangement as well for his gur, and you see he already added a pasture right next to his ovu. This is something that you commonly see with the Mongols, because this way the sheep production is accelerated. The sheep obviously have to take a long walk back home, but this way you get some nice extra sheep to work with, so you can delay yourself adding a lot more pastures. For Hera, he's got a nice location for that Aken Chapel as well. His food gatherers might actually be outside of that circle, so he needs to be careful with that. The biggest problem for him is that his hunt is outside the influence radius, so he might need to go professional scouts here if he wants to take that and use the influence radius of the Aken Chapel, or make a second prelate that is going to empower these vills. Last but not least, we have MarineLord aging up with the Imperial Academy. He is moving villagers to stone. He's moving villagers very heavily to gold, which makes me feel like we're going to see some sort of fast castle style play and then just pop Song Dynasty, but he hasn't started mining stone just yet. This mining camp might be decent to drop off stone, so he might not need to make a new one here. For now, he's aging up the feudal age with the Imperial Academy. Up north, we have some walls coming in here for Demon Sheep. He is not aging up just yet, if I'm not mistaken. He just dropped the Barbican of the Sun to the front line. Not being constructed by a ton of villagers. In fact, it is only one villager building the Barbican of the Sun. On the right side, we have walls coming in already for Sorakuma. So the first question, are we going to see any kind of aggression from the Mongols? And the answer is no. Instead, we're going to see a silver tree from Capoch. So the idea is going to be a trade boom. Now, in 1v1s, a trade boom with Mongols is not really an option on this map because the neutral markets are down in the Dale area. But in a team game scenario, you could ask your teammate, MarineLord, to make a market here and just trade with that. And it would work perfectly fine. It's almost corner to corner. And the efficiency of your trade depends on the distance covered between the two markets. And you see, this is exactly what you're seeing. MarineLord is going for a market. Now, they still need to wall off this side, but from this position all the way to, let's say, this corner, and the silver tree can be moved out there in the future if you need to, that would be like, I would assume 350 or so gold. That's a ton of gold. Because one thing that's very underappreciated when it comes to team games is that the map size is much bigger than it is in 1v1s. So corner-to-corner trade is even more effective than it is in 1v1s. Looks like we do have a market approach as well from the other team, Sorakuma's one, as the wars are nearing completion. Hera is trying to keep those open as long as possible, but the Khan of Siamjik should be able to scare that scout away. In fact, 2 sheep will also stay there in the middle. Wars are complete for the team of Sorakuma, and they're going for the same trade boom. Now, one thing to consider is that this silver tree right now from Siamjik is sort of in the middle of the map, so it is going to go all the way to the corner most likely, this market, but it's sort of not a corner-to-corner trade, whereas if you look at the one from Capoch, that is pretty much at the corner and almost to the other corner of the map. So I think the efficiency will be slightly better for Capoch's team at this point. Professional scouts in here for MarineLord. Not something that you are very surprised about at this point with the Chinese. He does have a stable up, and he can just bring all those deer carcasses into the supervised mill. Will give him a very nice food economy. Looks like a scout from Hera will get intercepted by the Khan. Trade cards already working for Siamjik. So now the question is, how effective are those trade cards? Because we're soon going to get that question answered as they start returning with gold. Stone being mined right now by Demon Sheep as he's going up with the Imperial Academy. So he already has 2 town centers, and the fact that he's still mining stone could signal that he wants to go 3 town centers. And since he already has the Barbican of the Sun, building the Imperial Academy will mean that you will have Song Dynasty in for you. So triple town center Song Dynasty boom for Demon Sheep. And for MarineLord, he's also on stone, but you see he's still on 1 town center. So his eco is going to be much weaker than Demon Sheep's one. Looking at those traders, it's 155 gold for Siamjik, 15 food and 15 wood also being brought back. Whereas on the other side, you are going to notice a couple of things here, and that's very clever from Capoch. He's making towers. And the idea with the towers is that they will provide a yam network to the traders. Even without the deer stones, your towers will provide that yam speed network to your traders. So that is going to accelerate your trade boom quite a bit. A horseman is coming out for Sorakuma, intending to intercept that prelate from Hera. Hera is going for relics, and now you see Capoch is making Mangadai. This is a clever idea, I think. The Mangadai give you a lot of map presence, a lot of firepower. Vololo attempt by Hera to try and convert that melee cavalry, but the Vololo attempt will fail, it seems. Mangadai should still be able to pick off the horseman, and now the scout should also get taken. Another horseman coming in from Sorakuma, so he's still just very relentless trying to pick off that prelate. And it seems like he might be able to. One more poke and the prelate dies. So indeed, Hera's gonna get denied from that relic for the time being. So, looking at the traders of Capoch, it's 213 gold, 19 food, 19 wood apiece, but obviously the gold is the big one. 213 as opposed to 171. This is the difference that you're getting from that distance. Obviously, once you have the double traders depleted and you no longer are making trade cards, you will move this silver tree to the corner, so it's going to be a lot more effective that way. Castle Age is already in for the Holy Roman Empire players. Hera coming back with the second relic as we speak. And on the other side, in the Ragnis Cathedral, you already have 2 relics as well for Sorakuma. So, as things stand, relic situation is that even. Demon Sheep having 1 scout hiding here, looking for that 1 prelate that's coming forward for the relic. Indeed, it is 100% true that the Vololo did its job by scaring away the cavalry. By failing, obviously what I mean is that it is not getting any conversion. But it's absolutely true, by popping the Vololo, you can scare away the melee units of your opponent. And it looks like Hera's not going to pop the Vololo on this relic. He didn't have the relic ready, I think. Because, as far as I know, the conversions are associated with the relic and not the prelate itself. So, this relic wasn't ready for a conversion. Ultimately, Capoch will be able to take down the scout that was killing that prelate, but the prelate will go down for the time being. Meanwhile, we have Palace of Shravia coming in here for Hera. That is going to be his Imperial Age landmark, and that's going to signal the start of his boom. Palace of Swabia, not yet coming in though for Sorakuma. He does have a market, so technically he could start adding a couple of traders himself if he decides to do so. The second market is in for them as well, so the distance to cover for those traders will be slightly bigger now. Still a couple of Mangonai out for Capoch, that's going to give them some map presence, and this relic is still accessible for Hera. This one is sort of contested. As things stand, Hera is almost guaranteed to have 3 relics in that Ragna's Cathedral, whereas on the other side, you already have 3 for Sorakuma, so he has to be happy with that. Samjik's Khan getting intercepted by those Mangodai, and really, just 4 Mangodai gives so much map presence for Capoch right now. Capoch, having the Yam speed network working for him obviously helps a lot. For whatever reason, his traders are returning on the far side of the map though, so they're not being affected by the towers. They are only affected when they go from the silver tree to the market, but not the other way around. So, not a perfect distribution of towers here for Capoch, but still, 213 gold apiece for the traders is just spectacular. Capoch has 1500 gold per minute income. That is just crazy. Compare that to even Hera with the Ragna's Cathedral. That is just brutal. And we are into this game only 12 minutes. So these traders are really paying for their price right now. Somewhat similarly to the ones from Siamjik, but Siamjik still has sort of inefficiency compared to traders of Capoch. So Capoch getting a lot more from that, and that's something that Siamjik will have to address at some point, because such a massive difference. Just compare that. Capoch, 1800 gold per minute. Some of that is being mined, I do believe. But still, the gold income difference for Capoch compared to Siamjik is pretty considerable. It's almost double the gold for Capoch right now. Of course, some of that comes from the gold mining operation. You got 16 villagers. Some of them are actually dropping it off at the Gur and not the step redoubt, so that's a bit sloppy from Capoch. He needs to move that Gur to make sure that he maximizes the efficiency of the step redoubt. Whereas on the other side, Siamjik is basically not mining gold, so part of the reason why his gold income is lower is because he's not mining gold, but still, both players have a spectacular amount of gold working for them. Stone was up for the Chinese player over here, Demon Sheep, pretty much reinforcing all the walls of his teammates with some fortifications. He's currently playing with 2 town centers, so looks like he was only mining some excess stone to make some additional walls happen, but he didn't have a 3rd town center. He's in Song Dynasty, and he's in Castle Age right now, going up to Yuan Dynasty right now with the Imperial Palace. Meanwhile, on the other side, you do have Song Dynasty as well for MarineLord, but he's playing with 3 town centers. So if you look at the villager counts for a brief moment, 83 for MarineLord, and for Demon Sheep, 82. This basically means that MarineLord, despite the fact that he was on 3 TCs, wasn't able to carve out a villager lead over a player that had 2. You had 2 town centers a lot faster for Demon Sheep, so part of the reason why you are seeing that villager discrepancy being non-existent is because MarineLord was delayed adding his additional town centers. Hera is moving out to take those sacred sites. His teammate Capoch still has some map control with the Mangodai, so Hera should be able to grab those sacred sites. He already has 3 relics, so he has to be satisfied with that, and he's mining a ton of stone. Wouldn't be surprised to see some forward castles going for him. It looks like he wants to play cavalry. Now, oftentimes, when you go for Holy Roman Empire, you see them being used as an infantry civilization with a mixture of Landsknechte, men-at-arms, and some spearmen. So it's a little bit unconventional to see knights from them, but not that much out of the box at all. They don't have anything special for the knights, but they have a very powerful and efficient economy, so going for knights is perfectly fine for the Holy Roman Empire. Sacred Site will be neutralized quite nicely here. The silver tree was moved by Siamjik, so now the returned gold amount is going to be much, much greater once the travel distance is longer. Still only 205 as opposed to Capoch's 213, so still slightly better numbers for Capoch. Second layer Storm was coming in even for Demon Sheep, so they're really scared of some sort of counterattack at this point. Multiple layers of Stone Walls on their side. One thing to consider is that they technically have a corner-to-corner trade as an option, because they control both corners, whereas MarineLord's team is not controlling this corner right now. They only have up until this point to trade. So you could actually have a slightly more efficient trade going for Siamjik should he move that silver tree all the way into that corner. As things stand, looking at the economies of Sorakuma, 90 villagers as opposed to the villager count of Hera, 102. Hera tiny bit ahead in that department. A couple of knights moving in here for Sorakuma trying to intercept that army. Also a couple of forward villas, but those will be picked up by Capoch. These Mangadai are doing so much work at this point. Being able to intercept priests that are coming out for relics, being able to pick off forward villagers. The value in just these free Mangadais and the Khan is just exceptional. And they just keep running away from the knights. Knights barely able to take an engagement right now. We also have some scouts coming in here. For Siamjik, those are leftover from Feudal Age. There is basically no more hunt to pick up, so they will soon become obsolete. You will use them as an arrow sponge in front of your army at some point, but they are throwaway units now for the time being. MarineLord now playing on 3 town centers. He has a pretty sizable farming economy going for him as well. Some of those mills being supervised as well. One thing that I would have loved to see, though, is a couple of granaries from him if he's in UM's dynasty. And boy, oh boy, this is what AoE4 was thinking about. One way to break a stalemate in such a game is by going for a wonder. And we have seen that being done multiple times. Where is that wonder at? It's right here. It is the Monument of the Great Khan. Is a trade boom into a wonder, so a wonder countdown starts. 1440 remaining until MarineLord's team have to destroy that wonder. It's a beautiful looking wonder, and you can see where all those resources went for Siamjik. He just has a crazy trade boom and he turns that into an instant wonder, and now MarineLord's team have to make a move. Now, keep in mind that I think at this point, one of the most legitimate things that MarineLord's team could do is go for the sacred sites. If you capture the sacred site, you will only have a 10-minute countdown. So if you do that before you reach the 10-minute countdown for a wonder, you will actually cut ahead into that. Capoch just now reaching Imperial Age as MarineLord is coming in with some palisades. 14 minutes is a long time, but you don't really want to wait a ton because I am fairly certain that from this point on, Demon Sheep is going to fortify these positions with 15 layers of stone walls. Coming in with a decent force of knights is Hera, though. That's a fairly sizable force. They will be able to get map control, and they can start blasting their way through walls. One thing that Sorakuma's team doesn't really have is army numbers, so that's something to be mindful of at this point. Sacred Site being captured right now by Sorakuma as well. He had the Sacred Site in the middle, but that's going to be neutralized in a matter of seconds, as we do see the scouts of MarineLord alongside the knights of Hera cleaning up a couple of knights over here. Hera's forces are fairly sizable. Let's talk about that for a brief moment. He's got 52 knights. And if they blast their way through these walls, especially if they are supported by Fire Lancers, they could go for a snipe on that monument very fast. At this point, we do have stone walls coming in to surround the otherwise spectacular monument. The monument is surrounded by men-at-arms statues, by the way. Monument of the Great Khan. It is the wonder for the Mongols. It's a beautiful building. Let's see if Capoch's team will be able to destroy it. Landmarks now all up, and you have sacred sites being captured. So, at this point, you can still cut into that lead. As I said, if you capture those sacred sites in the next 2 minutes, there is going to be a 10-minute sacred site countdown and 12 minutes wonder countdown. Now, the most important thing with that is that you can slow down the sacred site countdown. If you're just staying inside the sacred site as an enemy, you basically pause that countdown, whereas you can't pause the wonder countdown. So what Siamjik's team will have to do if this happens is just contest those sacred sites, and as long as they're contested, the countdown isn't going. Fire Lancers from Demon Sheep are blasting their way through these walls over here, but they bump into stone walls that are reinforced with the Great Wall Gatehouse, so the Fire Lancers won't be able to accomplish much. Sacred Site 1 captured, Sacred Site 2 is not in the control of Capoch's team just yet. They are grabbing Sacred Site number 3. So now it comes down to Sacred Site number 4 being captured in 1.5 minutes, and then making sure that Demon Sheep's team is never able to contest them. That's the big thing. Fire Lancers moving in on the left side though, and you have 1.5 minutes to make sure that you have all 3 Sacred Sites without any of them being neutralized or ever contested. Otherwise, you have to go for that Wonder. The castle is about to burn down over here, but the Sacred Site remains under the control of Hera's team. Still, 50 seconds remaining. Knights are coming in for Sorakuma. They know exactly that they need to cut into that 10-minute mark, because from that point on, there is only one way for Hera's team to win this game, and that would be destroying the monument of the Great Khan. Multiple keeps coming in the middle, but Fire Lancers join the party. MarineLord didn't have any Fire Lancers for him just yet. We have a ton of Mangudai coming in though, and those Mangudai will be able to perform quite nicely against the Fire Lancers here. Sacred Site being captured, 10:30 remaining on the clock, and it looks like MarineLord's team might be able to grab that just before the Thunder countdown hits the 10-minute mark. Oh, it's gonna be rather close. This basically means that you have no window to let the opponent take or contest those Sacred Sites. You have like a 15 seconds advantage. So from this point on, it's a defensive game for both teams and an offensive game at the same time. If Kaiyo of Fallen is able to contest either of those Sacred Sites for just 20 seconds, then Hera's team will lose their Sacred Site attempt. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. So you basically cannot let a single unit into that Sacred Site. If those Fire Lancers run in, that might be it. And the moment the Wonder victory gets ahead of the Sacred Site count, then there's only one win condition for Hera's team, and that is taking down that Wonder. Even just that 2 seconds over here is something that matters at this point. Here come a couple of infantry units, and at this point, Sacred Site is being taken. I think that now there is no window for the Sacred Site victory. There is no Sacred Site countdown in the spec overlay, so we can't compare the 2 times, but I'm fairly certain that it was enough time having those Sacred Sites contested that now the Wonder is ahead. Mangonels now coming in large numbers for Sanjik. Their forces are gigantic, and the Mangonels are relaying a volley of rocks on top of those Mangudai. You gotta be very careful with those Mangudai against all those Mangonels. Mangudai now coming in, trying to jump on top of the Mangonels, but that's a ton of firepower to be had over there. Cannon lining up for MarineLord, trying to blast their way through this one, but the Fire Lancers moving in from Demon Sheep, burning down all those clock tower bombards. Mangudai are still in large numbers for Capoch, but at this point, they have 8 minutes to destroy that Wonder, because on the right side, the Sacred Site might even be neutralized, because Sorakuma has enough forces to neutralize this, which completely resets the countdown for Capoch's team. In the middle, Hera's forces are quite large, and they're jumping on the Mangonels. Ton of firepower out there on those Mangonels, but they're also pretty expensive, and all those Elite Knights should be able to deal with the majority of them Fire Lancers, trying to come in with some charges, but once they deplete their charge, they will perform at a quite underwhelming level against those Knights, and most of the Mangonels are going down. On the right side, Sorakuma is able to neutralize the Sacred Site and also take down the keep, so from this point on, there is only one way for Hera's team to win this game, and that is getting to the monument of the Great Khan. Another batch of Mangonels coming in here for Sanjik, also some Springolds being added. This is where the upgraded roller shell triggers for the Mongols could come in very handy. Having 13 ranged Springolds to snipe down the opponent's siege could be quite valuable. At this point, it's going to be clock tower bombards coming in from both sides, Fire Lancers trickling in for Demon Sheep. They know exactly that they just need to slow down the opponent. 7.5 minutes remaining. And slowly but surely, Hera's team is crawling forward. But do they have enough time to get all the way to this monument? It's also walled in, and I'm fairly certain that if things get ugly, Demon Sheep will add 5 more layers of stone walls. Mangudai slowly crawling forward, Mangonels relaying a volley, and that is going to be quite a lot of Mangudai dead on the battlefield. Hera's cavalry is doing a very nice job dealing with all those Mangonels, but now you have the flood of infantry coming in from Sorakuma. Mangudai getting some nice hits on them, and their hit-and-run strategy is going to work out to perfection here against the infantry. Hera's team is actually taking a quite decent engagement here, and they're slowly crawling closer and closer to that Wonder. 6 minutes remaining. Infantry flood never ending, as it seems. Capoch needs a lot more Mangudai on the battlefield, but there is enough firepower for MarineLord to blast through those walls very fast. The biggest problem, I think, for MarineLord at this point is that his population is in Bombards and not Fire Lancers. It might be wise to have one other player go for Bombards, and then you have Fire Lancers. Obviously, you want to deal with the opponent's Bombards as well, but Fire Lancers are just so powerful at this point. Mangudai now coming in, and it looks like Sorakuma's team will be forced back. MarineLord is getting close to blasting his way through that first layer of walls, and they are definitely making progress. Look at the stream of cavalry coming in for Hera, just for a moment. All those cavalry streaming through the map, and the reinforcements are coming in at a much more convincing rate. For MarineLord's team, 550 remaining. First layer of walls is going down. Look at the firepower that's being set up over here as Sayamjik is using the Kurultai here. We haven't talked about this landmark, but usually you use the Steppe Redoubt with your Castle Age landmark for the Mongols. The Kurultai is a landmark that's able to heal your units if the Khan is nearby. So it's very good for holding a specific position. Usually you see the Steppe Redoubt, but when you see the Kurultai, that just tells you that this was the game plan the whole time for Sorakuma's team. First layer of walls is done, but it's a very narrow choke point that you have to get through, which is always a nasty thing against that many Mangonels. For your reference, there is 10 Mangonels, a bunch of Springolds, infantry flood as well, 5 minutes remaining, and this game turns into a Defend the Wonder scenario for Kai'o Fallen. Bombards now with the 12 range trying to focus down the Springolds. Springolds do have their own 13 range, so these are Mongol Springolds with the extra range. Couple of Nest of Bees also joined the party. Not necessarily the best fight ever though for those Mangudai. Capoch was caught a little out of position there, so the Fire Lancers managed to get a good charge in. Fire Lancers once again trying to jump on the cannon. 430 remaining as Hera's team is trying to push up that hill, but there's just so much firepower out there. Clock Tower Bombard still working out pretty nicely, but Hera's team is losing a bit of a momentum at this point. Mangudai now being replenished, Hera's cavalry also decimated by all that infantry flood, also some cavalry from Sorakuma. Both cavalry players now have the biology upgrade in as well, so they have 324 HP on those knights. Cannon once again look like they're going to start crawling forward. 4 minutes remaining. Couple of towers coming in as well for Capoch. You see he's getting arrow slits on them. He obviously wants to affect his cavalry with the Yam speed network, so it's a little easier for him to reinforce. And in fact, he does have quite a lot of archer range on the right side over here to help out as well. Hera's cavalry desperate to try and jump on that siege as the second layer of walls do go down. Daemonship knows how to play this one. He knows exactly what he needs to do. That is another layer of stone walls, just turtling it out as much as possible. This is going to be an extremely difficult push, and we talked about this choke point. This is the narrowest choke point to get through. Everywhere else, you have wider choke points. This is the hardest to push through, especially against that many Fire Lancers. Bombards slowly crawling up here, but the Fire Lancers charging down hills into that narrow choke point is just very difficult to fight against. For Hera's team, 3 minutes remaining. Once they get on top of this hill, it's going to be much easier to push those walls though. So, if this choke point falls for Kai'o Fallen, there is still a lot of things to worry about. Mangonel setting up, look at that firepower. We are talking about a dozen of Mangonels firing down hills over here, but the Bombards are finally able to get some shots on them. Mangudai, bit of a traffic jam for them, and those Mangonels could get a beautiful volley in there. That's exactly what we're going to see. And the Mangonels just decimate all those Mangudai numbers. Hera's team is getting desperate, it seems. They try to snipe down some of the Mangonels, but many of them do survive. Behind this one, the Fire Lancers are also coming in for Daemonship, something that we haven't talked about, and this is going to set Hera's team back so much. Because now they have to dispatch a bunch of knights to deal with this one, and there is only 2.5 minutes remaining on that countdown. I think that Daemonship just wanted to go flat out for a landmark snipe. Could have been better against the non-Chinese player, because the Chinese player has a ton of landmarks due to the dynasty system. But the idea was great, and this is going to slow down Hera's team so much, giving time for Daemonship to rebuild all those walls. All the effort, all the work from Hera's team is just gone. And with that, we have Capoch resigning, and will soon followed by Hera and MarineLord. What a game! What a game! It was some craziness in this one. Gotta love the strategy from Daemonship's team. They knew exactly that this map could play out slow. They don't want to play a long game, so they just went for a fast wonder and forced their opponents to make a move. Now, you could ask yourself the question, why are Wonder victories allowed? Because, oh, yeah, they result in games like this. The exact reason why Wonder victories are allowed is because this way, if there is a massive stalemate, there is a chance for one team to break it. 17-minute Wonder construction for Fallen, and they win the game. A bit of a cheesy play, but there is a lot of ways that you can play cheesy in Age of Empires 4. Talk about Delhi rolling up and then going for the sacred sites. But this one, the Wonder strategy was just crazy, but also wonderful at the same time. They played it out perfectly. They knew exactly that they are going for this strategy, and they executed that with perfection. So credits to Sorakuma's team, because they really had a great idea behind this one. Having the Mongols trade boom, gather the resources that they need for a wonder, and this is where we have to highlight that the Mongol wonder does not have a stone cost associated with it. So it's a slightly different wonder than the other civilizations can have. So the Mongol trade boom and then the wonder is what basically was the genius idea here for Samjik. I'm fairly certain the reason why he has 5,000 social score is because he had a wonder here, 89 villagers for both, much larger economy in the end for Hera's team, but obviously for Samjik and his buddies, it was all about defending that wonder at this point. Ultimately, if you look at the trade boom, it's 44,000 gold for Samjik, not that much lower than Hera's one though, so Hera also had a very nice gold income here, but if you compare it to MarineLord or Sorakuma, that's the power of the Mongol trade boom. Capoch with 46,000, 44,000 for Samjik. If you look at the KD, that is going to be on the side of Capoch, somewhat surprisingly, but that's usually from the manga die. Rest of that doesn't really matter, honestly, because obviously MarineLord and Hera were forced to take very inefficient engagements throughout the game. Capoch had some good engagements at the beginning with the manga die, but ultimately they had to push up hills against a Chinese player with stone walls and then a Mongol player with 13 range spring walls and mangonels. Was next to impossible to pull off. If you remove the Wonder and the Sacred Site victory condition, what happens if the two teams are completely stalled out and the game is going on for 5 hours? This was a difficult thing to decide for us. I am personally not a fan of Wonder victories, so let's make it clear. However, there needs to be a way to decide a stalemate, if you think about it. Just think about a map like French Pass. There is just no way to decide a stalemate if you don't let a Wonder victory be a thing. It's a little cheesy, and it's not necessarily working as intended, but you gotta find a way to decide a game. Otherwise, these games, especially with having some juggernaut late game civilizations like Chinese or Rus, these could stall out and have like 5, 6, 7 hour long games simply because neither of the teams are capable of pushing. With that being said, you do have an even scoreline here. The good news for Capoch and Hera, and of course MarineLord, is that now we're going to their own home map. So, they can pick an open map, and they can pick Danube River. The open map is going to be Highview. I'll be very, very surprised if Hera's team didn't pick Highview. We already have the countdown going on, as we will have the Highview coming in. Civilizations will be the exact same as we used in game number 1. Hera will be picking the French, Rus for MarineLord, and Capoch playing with the English. And for Demon French for Demon Sheep, Samjik is going to be playing Rus, and Sorakuma will be playing the Abbasids. So, identical civilizations as compared to game number 1, which was won by Hera's team. We're going to Highview as the game countdown is nearing completion. 2.5 minutes remaining before game number 3. This will decide who gets into the top 8 of AoE4 Pro League. Hera's team failed to close out the set in the previous game, fell to what was a very cheesy but clever strategy from Fallen, and now we will have game number 3, a map that Hera's team has to be satisfied with. Open map, exactly fitting their playstyle, so nothing to be worried about, I believe, for Hera's team, if they can perform on the same level as they did in game number 1. This being said, there is one big thing to consider, and that is that Siamjik's strategy in game number 1 was somewhat questionable. You do have the knights and the horse archers being utilized in the first game. We'll see if he changes that up, because I feel like the biggest problem for Siamjik's team was his strategy in game number 1. Abbasid is going to be your camel archer civilization over here, although there's a chance that Sorakuma changes stuff up and he's going to play food archers because the camel archers didn't work out that well. But ultimately, there is a lot of options for Sorakuma with the Abbasids. I still believe that the English is probably a better choice here for Capoch. Just as a reminder, when it comes to civilization selections, the players are able to pick any civilization on their team that was not utilized in the directly preceding game. So in game number 3, they're able to pick any civilization that was not used in game number 2. So Chinese, Mongols, and Holy Roman Empire are inaccessible for either of these teams, but any other civilizations are open for picking. In just 50 seconds, we will have the final game starting from this set. So grab yourself some snacks, because it's gonna come down to game number 3. Welcome to game number 3 in this best of 3 in between AoE4 and Capoch+Hera, a team that got his name from Capoch winning a show match in a 4-0 fashion against Hera, Capoch+MarineLord and Hera versus Demon Sheep, Sorakuma, and Siamjik on the northern side of the map. We are going to have Capoch's team with Hera playing as the French pocket. On the left side, you will have MarineLord playing as a Rus in green, and on the right side, we will have Capoch playing as the yellow English. Down south in the pocket is also going to be a French player with the Demon Sheep in red. On the right side is going to be Sorakuma as the Abbasids in purple, and we will have Siamjik playing as a Rus in teal. Identical civilizations compared to game number 1. The biggest question at this point, I do believe, is how the Abbasids will be utilized. In game number 1, they were utilized as a camel archer civilization, but it felt a little underwhelming, fell to the longbow rush of the English. I really feel like if you're playing camel archers here, you can't let the English player have a decent amount of longbowmen. Otherwise, you're just going to be in trouble. The scout of Sorakuma almost getting picked off by the town center of Capoch could have been an absolutely disastrous start over here for our purple player. And there's a chance that Capoch will be able to intercept that scout. Wouldn't be surprised to see his teammates coming closer as well, trying to knock that scout out of his saddle, because this scout is carrying quite a lot of sheep, so being able to kill it would be massive for Capoch. He's trying to get a hit on top of that scout, but it looks like he won't be able to. So with that, Sorakuma is getting away. Meanwhile, up north, we'll have to take a look at MarineLord's gathering process of bounty. He's at 160 currently, as compared to Siamjik, who is sitting at 220. So slightly better start for our teal Rus player, but obviously there is a lot of room for recovery on Highview. So compared to Arabia, Highview has a lot more aggressive predators, namely wolves. So you can get a very nice amount of bounty. Usually both Rus players are able to get to 500 bounty if they gather bounty at a rather even rate. There is still some unclaimed patches of deer on the left side, quite a lot in fact, so there's a lot of extra bounty to be gathered for both Rus players at this point. Council Hall already coming in for Capoch. On the right side, in the pocket, Hera is coming up with the School of Cavalry, as you would expect, and MarineLord is likely going to age up with the Golden Gate. Down south, you have no Golden Gate coming out just yet for Samjik. He's very, very heavy on the food department, just now dropping the Golden Gate with 3 villagers. In the pocket, you have the School of Cavalry coming in as well for Demon Sheep, as you would expect. And on the House of Wisdom, you already have the Economy Wing coming in for Sorakuma. Looking at MarineLord, he's delaying his Golden Gate quite a bit here, which is a little surprising, but obviously there could be a strategy for this. Just chopping the wood at the beginning and then sending 8 villagers on the Golden Gate to catch up. Still, a little surprising that the Golden Gate is being delayed this much. It's probably because his eco is somewhat unbalanced. He's a little low on food. He was probably low on sheep, and oh boy, that's a bit of a trouble for MarineLord. He's running out of sheep underneath his town center, and he still doesn't have a feud for Feudal Age. At first I thought it was deliberate to delay Feudal Age, but reality is that he ran out of sheep, and because of that, that Feudal Age is going to be delayed quite heavily. Looking at the bounty, Samjik is at 445, and MarineLord is sitting at 325, so in every possible element of the game, Samjik is leading when it comes to the Rus gameplay. When it comes to the pocket gameplay, it looks like it is going to be identical Feudal Age times for both pocket players. Knights are coming out for Demon Sheep, whereas Hera's going to play Professional Scouts. So that's the first discrepancy in approaches. Hera's going to play Professional Scouts, whereas Demon Sheep is going to play a lot more aggressive with Knights. Same thing that they did in game number 1. And on the right, for the Abbasid player, the question is, are we going to see a change up in strategy to see foot archers, or are we still going to see camel archers? Up north, we also have a couple of wolves being taken down by MarineLord. That's going to give him a nice little extra bounty. He's currently sitting at 420, very nice. Whereas on the other side, 500 has already been cracked by Samjik, so he unlocked his tier 3 of bounty. And looking at his resources, he's probably getting close to Castle Age at this pace, because with all that gold, he really doesn't need to sell a ton of wood to go up to Castle Age. For Sorakuma, as things stand, it's going to be Camel Archers, right? Yep, it is Camel Archers. So, no change up in strategies really from Kaio or Fallen. They feel confident in the same approach they had in game number 1. Now, one of the differences is going to be that MarineLord is much later to Feudal Age than he was in game number 1. So, the fact that MarineLord is set back quite heavily is going to hurt them quite a bit. Obviously, there is a room for recovery over here because MarineLord's bounty is quite nice as well, and now he has a steady food income with the berries. But you see, he will just now start researching Professional Scouts, so not only is he delayed to Feudal Age, he's also delayed to Professional Scout, which is a bit of a problem for them. Demon Sheep hiding a couple of scouts in the Stealth Forest, looking to jump on Hera's gold miners. Hera knows exactly that his gold mine is exposed, so he's going to play with the defensive approach here. Defensive tower on that gold mine, also a couple of knights coming in to defend. And for whatever reason, Hera didn't drop off the carcasses from those scouts at the town center. That must be a misclick. Or he's bringing them to Capoch. I think he's bringing them to Capoch. Because if you take a look at Capoch's base, he's running out of sheep. It makes some sense for Hera to bring in some carcasses to his teammate as well. This way, Capoch doesn't have to invest into that much farming at the beginning. Knights slowly trickling in for Demon Sheep. He's hiding in the Stealth Forest for the time being, waiting for Hera to move out and then jump on that gold mine. And indeed, Hera's gonna be a very good teammate here and deliver some carcasses to his teammate. Capoch down south. Samjik is playing a lot more selfish. He's going to ferry in all the deer for himself. MarineLord, I think he's just now about to start ferrying in deer. Indeed, he's just now coming in with the first couple of scouts from that housing cabin after the initial 4. So his Professional Scouts play here will be heavily delayed. And if you look at the resources for Samjik, he's getting close to Castle Age. MarineLord is not that much behind, but Samjik is definitely going to have a head start on that. And now the Red Knights pop out of the forest. It is a 2v1 right now with some Camel Archer support. Not a ton though, but those definitely help out, swinging this in the favor of Demon Sheep. And for now, Hera had some idle time on those gold miners. Capoch's forces are coming in to relieve the pressure over here though, and it's a fairly sizable force of longbows, so they should have no trouble dealing with those Camel Archers. I feel like at this point, the biggest advantage that Samjik's team has is the fact that he's about to go up to Castle Age, whereas MarineLord is set back quite a bit. Once again, the high trade house approach can be seen, so he's not going for the Abbey of Eternity. This time around, being the faster player to Castle Age, it means that he can afford this one a little easier than he could have in the first game. Because he will have his window to build his monastery, and remember, the warrior monks are a lot more expensive on monasteries than they are on the Abbey of Eternity, so it's going to be a little more difficult to collect relics early on, but ultimately, being the faster player to Castle Age, you might be able to afford this. Knights looking to take a fight here, close to the base of MarineLord. They're trying to come in on the berries. Berries have already been abandoned, and there is the Abbey of Eternity. You see that Demonship will be fully aware that his opponent is grabbing that. Not a single village was killed in that charge, but the most important thing right now is that MarineLord's landmark is being delayed. High Trade House almost completed by Siamjik. He will have 3 archer ranges working for him as well, so bit of a change up in the strategy. In game number 1, he also went for knights. This time around, it's going to be full horse archers. As you see, Demon Sheep and Sorakuma are trying to delay the Rus player into Castle Age as much as possible, and they are accomplishing quite a lot here, idling a ton of those villagers. So, at this point, being able to slow down at Castle Age is immensely valuable because it is buying a lot of time for Siamjik to make that monastery and pick up the relics. And this is going to be a slower process getting the relics than it is to go with the Abbey. But in exchange, you're going to have a high trade house that's giving you 141 gold per minute trickle, plus infinite access to deer. So there's definitely an upside going for the high trade house, but the most important thing is that you still can't fall behind in relic collection. On the right side, we have a fairly peaceful scenario right now. Capoch's archers have so far been massed at home. I think he is just now moving out. Indeed, his knights, supported by some forces from Hera as well, they are moving towards the base of Sorakuma. Sorakuma doesn't have a ton of defense, and that could be quite concerning, especially if there is the siege upgrade already for Capoch. Capoch does have the siege upgrade, so he could start popping out some rams very soon, and this could be quite concerning for Sorakuma, especially because the Castle Age horse archers for Siamjik won't perform that well against the longbowmen. Knights now coming in for a charge will pick off one villager, the second one will survive. Hera will not pursue that any longer as Castle Age is on the way with the military wing for Sorakuma. Horse archers slowly trickling in for Siamjik. They could probably do quite a lot of damage on Hera's base. It's unlikely that they can do much at the base of Capoch, and somewhat unlikely that they can do much at the base of MarineLord as well. So probably the best target for you, if you are Siamjik, is going to be Hera. Speaking of Hera, though, he's got some knights supporting the forces of Capoch, and this could turn into a 2 versus 1 very, very easily on the right side. I struggle to see how this archer group is going to be able to stop this one, because Capoch's archers' numbers are just as big as the ones from Sorakuma. But you also see quite a lot of knights over here, battering ram already knocking on that wall. And with that, this is going to be a difficult hold for Sorakuma. Those archers won't perform that well against the knights. They will need some knight support from Demon Sheep. Demon Sheep is coming in, but at this point the knight numbers are looking way better for Hera. Longbows already crawling up as well, and the lumberjacks are already being denied from Sorakuma, making it much more difficult to reinforce those archers. Ram knocking down the tower as a forward tower is coming in from Capoch. That's going to extend the network of castles bonus, so the firepower is going to be much greater on those longbows, and the production buildings for Sorakuma are already going down, and that's going to hurt quite badly, because reinforcing those archers will be quite challenging. Hera and Capoch are the only players not in Castle Age though, so all 3 players from Kyle fall and hitting Castle Age, and once you get veteran archers, things could easily start swinging in the favor of Sorakuma. He's also mixing a couple of crossbowmen against those knights. Knights also with Castle Age upgrades, or Demon Sheep trying to intercept the villager that's making the tower. For the time being, the tower seems like it's going to be completed. Crossbows still trying to be popped out from those ranges before the ranges do go down. Knights retreating behind the wood line of Sorakuma for the time being. Horse archers have been running all around for Siamjik though, and they have been harassing Hera quite a bit. In fact, I'm fairly certain part of the reason why the villagers have been idle here is because the horse archers were active there. But as things stand, the biggest question is probably this fight. Keep in mind that the Abbasids can make siege weapons back at home with their infantry immediately, so it's going to be much and much easier for them to hold this one than any other civilization. So he can get some mangonels out against the longbows, and now I'm starting to feel like the Taiwanese team, Kai'o Fallen, is getting more and more ahead. Only one relic for Siamjik though, Capoch also with one relic despite the fact that he was later to Castle Age, so he isn't falling behind in relic collection numbers, and now MarineLord will be able to intercept the forces of Siamjik here. That's a pretty good fight, although with reinforcements coming in from Siamjik, MarineLord will be forced back. Quite a lot of reinforcements coming in indeed, as we have some scouts join the party as well. These will be great to soak up the arrow fire. As on the right side, the Mangonel defense should be able to hold off Capoch's forces. They will take down the tower as well. Hera, still not in Castle Age, neither is Capoch. Capoch, is he going up? Capoch is not going up yet. And looking at Hera, he's going up with the guild hall, so he's getting closer and closer to Castle Age. On the other side, the Royal Institute was the building of choice for Daemonship, and this is a massive difference maker. Because by having the Royal Institute, you will have access to the Royal Bloodlines upgrade for a fairly reasonable price in Castle Age, and this is a massive upgrade. 300 or 35% extra HP on the cavalry. That is a difference maker in those Night Wars, and that's not something that Hera's gonna be able to grab until Imperial Age. On the right side, we do have a bit of a scuffle between one Royal Knight and a Warrior Monk. Siamjik will just disengage and run back home for a Relic. That's going to be Relic number 3 for him because he already has 2 in that monastery. Here comes the big fight though. We do have some Warrior Monks inspiring this army for MarineLord. He does not have the HP upgrade on the Horse Archer, neither does Siamjik, so Siam decides to retreat for the time being. He is not killing that Warrior Monk that he could have intercepted. He is going to pick off the other Warrior Monk though, so this retreat is going to be done in an orderly fashion. And now you do have the Knights coming in from Daemonship. Soon this could be a 2 versus 1 on the MarineLord. Knights coming in to reinforce, but Hera comes from behind. He also has veteran Royal Knights, and the unique upgrade is not in for Daemonship just yet. So those Knights are identical, so are the Horse Archers. This is a fight that Hera's team is gonna be able to win, especially thanks to the support of those Warrior Monks that are empowering the army of MarineLord. And now MarineLord is putting up a pursuit, trying to finish off those cavalry units from Daemonship before they grow in numbers. Behind this one, this Knight pursued the Warrior Monk all the way into the base of Siamjik, but the big fight is happening in the middle. Capoch's forces are all the way back at home. It's a large group of longbowmen, 56 to be precise, and he's going to have veterans soon, but so far they weren't really able to influence the fight. Mangonels are coming in here for Sorakuma, supported by some archers. As things stand, MarineLord is sitting on only 1 relic, whereas Siamjik is on 4 now, so that's a decisive advantage for our Teal Rus player when it comes to gold income per mate. You see it's 575 as opposed to 150, and the difference is going to show in the timing of the Boyar's Fortitude upgrade, as a couple of knights from Daemonship come in to raid the base of Capoch. Now Daemonship has the HP upgrade, so it's 310 health as opposed to 230. The knights from Daemonship are much better than the ones from Hera. However, it looks like Hera's team is going to triple team our purple Abbasid player on the right side, Sorakuma, as all of those forces are converging upon his base. Whereas for Sorakuma's team, they wanted to take down the Rus player in the corner. I feel like Hera's push is going to materialize a little faster over here because those forces are already up here, and I think it is the team of Sorakuma that has to respond to this one, but obviously their armies are out of position right now. Looks like they don't care. Looks like they don't care about their Abbasid player, and you can justify that to a certain extent, because the Abbasid player is probably less valuable than the Rus player at this point, so if this turns out to be a base trade scenario, which is a likely possibility at this point, there is a likely chance that it's a better scenario for Sorakuma's team to take down the Rus player as opposed to losing their own Abbasid player. Night raids still intensifying for Daemonship. This is a decider game here, and the Knights are now coming in. Any kind of siege here for Sorakuma. Indeed, there is 3 mangonels, a couple of archers, and the Abbasids can make any kind of siege weapon they want on this battlefield. This is looking very grim for Capoch's team at this point, and they might be the ones needing to pull back their forces to fight this. Because as things stand, it looks like Sorakuma's base is gonna get disintegrated. All the longbows are moving in. This could be a base trade. Because at this point, the horse archers will clean up all those crossbowmen without any major difficulty, and you only have to destroy the starting town center and the House of Wisdom here. So even if Sorakuma runs villagers, he's going to lose both of his landmarks and he will get defeated. But so will MarineLord be. I think the only thing that Sorakuma needs is a couple of rams, and this could be an interesting scenario because if Sorakuma gets defeated, he cannot make siege weapons on the battlefield anymore. And if that happens, which is a likely scenario right now with the House of Wisdom already being taken down, the Town Center already being taken down, Town Center for MarineLord also gone, the moment either of these players get knocked out of the game, they will lose control over their armies, including these raiding forces by MarineLord, including these forces. They are doing quite a lot of work behind the scenes, killing so many villagers from Demon Sheep. MarineLord did lose his town center. So many knights out here for Demon Sheep. I think Hera wants to make one big charge happen. They probably want to knock out the Abbasid player and then make a charge, deal with all those knights. The Abbey of Eternity is on fire, and this game could turn into a 2v2. What an absolute craziness here. The knights are slaughtering all the villagers for Sorakuma. In the end, though, I feel like trading the Abbasid player for the Rus player is perfectly fine for AoE4, because the Rus player is probably a lot more valuable than the Abbasid player is at this point. The House of Wisdom is about to go down, and so will the Golden Gate. So MarineLord gets defeated, but so will Sorakuma. This is exactly what you call a base trade. Oh boy. So this turns into what is a somewhat surprising 2v2 now, with a big mass of longbows for Capoch, a big mass of knights for Hera, and now all of these forces will converge on Hera's base, and honestly, this is getting better and better for Hera's team. Because one thing to consider is that Demon Sheep's team has no siege. Just look at this. About 20 knights, something that Hera can trade off, and then the horse archers can't do much against buildings. Compare this to the other side. Capoch is the siege player. He is still alive. And I feel like Hera's team has to be satisfied with this one. There was a tournament in 2016, I do believe, hosted by Nili, that was called Let Your Teammate Die. It was a 3v3 Age of Empires 2 tournament. And wait a minute, the mangonels are still working. Are these forces controlled by AI? That could change things up. Still, I think the big thing is that the siege player of Hera's team is still alive, whereas on the other side you don't have the siege player alive anymore for AoE4, and you see, when those knights mostly go down from Demon Sheep, there's going to be very, very minimal siege going for the team of AoE4. And now, it is Demon Sheep's landmarks under attack. Horse archers are scrambled to defend, and there is also a big mass of royal knights in. These guys have 300 HP, and Hera's knights are nowhere to be found. Now, if those knights all jump on those longbows, this could be a disaster for Capoch. Hera's knights coming in here, they know exactly that this is not enough for Demon Sheep's team to push, but they need to finish off Demon Sheep right now before those knights can jump on the longbowmen. School of Cavalry is burning down. There is the starting town center, and the third landmark is the Royal Institute right next to it. Those knights with 300 HP, way better than the ones than Hera has, 230 HP only. Horse archers are now moving into the base of Capoch, and they're doing a ton of work. If we had any kind of break over here, we could compare the villager numbers, but that's not really a possibility, and Capoch is mismicroing his archers here. The knights get an absolutely stunning surround, and with all those archers being surrounded and no knights help from Hera at this point, Capoch could have his entire army absolutely annihilated. He's trying to retreat, trying to get some kills on those horse archers. Hera's cavalry just now coming in to support. The rams were taken down by all the villagers. The town center still stands. Hera will have to trade off his knights over here, but that's gonna be difficult because his knights are way weaker. That's the trade-off that you're getting with the guild hall as opposed to the Royal Institute. Horse archers slowly being taken down by Capoch's forces, but this has to be considered a win for Sorakuma and his team. Sorakuma just watching from the sidelines as he's already defeated. So is MarineLord. The knights will be able to finish off Capoch's archers, and right now, the difference maker is that Royal Bloodlines upgrade that came from the Royal Institute. Now, Hera does have the guild hall, so he can get some extra resources for himself, which could be a saving grace. But now I feel like Capoch is getting his eco entirely cleaned up. Capoch is down to 34 villagers, and in what is a 2v2 match now, I think Siamjik and Demon Sheep are leading. The Rus player still proves to be more valuable than the Abbasid one. But ultimately, I think it comes down to that Royal Bloodlines upgrade, because the Knights are just so much more valuable at this point for Demon Sheep compared to the ones of Hera. the craziest 3v3 set that we have seen so far. Wonder victory, base trade, everything that you wanted to see in this one. And as things stand, Hera's team is about to get eliminated. They won game number 1, and then Sorakuma, Demon Sheep, and Siamjik make a comeback. The strongest team, or at least allegedly the strongest team of the tournament, Hera, Capoch, and MarineLord, could face elimination right now. 51 population only for Capoch, and as things stand, Hera taps out, so does Capoch. Hera, Capoch, and MarineLord, a team that defeated Vortex, Lucifron, and the Mista in a 3v3 show match before, thought to be one of the strongest teams of the entire tournament, fall to Kyo Fallen. Absolutely stunning match, with the crazy wonder play from Kyo Fallen, then the base trade here, ultimately resulting in the victory of Kyo Fallen, and this is what probably decided the fate of this game. And I feel like if Hera also went for the Royal Institute, and he had Royal Bloodlines, they could have traded Knights, and then this ball of Longbows finishes it all. It came down to the fact that Hera's Knights were much weaker compared to his opponent's Knights, because Hera decided to go for the Guildhall as opposed to the Royal Institute. I'm not saying the Guildhall is the bad decision, but in that specific moment in the game, the Royal Institute paid a lot more for Siamjik and Demon Sheep, and with that, having the big mass of Horse Archers, having 5 relics for the Rus player, obviously helped a lot. And in the end, Sorakuma being eliminated was way less impactful than MarineLord being eliminated. So, after a crazy base trade, Siamjik and Demon Sheep close out the game. Hera, Capoch fall. Capoch with 67 kills, 161 losses. So many villagers died here for Hera. Capoch. Look at the villager count dropping. That's probably the biggest problem of all. For a long time, Capoch had one of the best villager counts in the game, but then he just started losing all of those to the Knights and the Horse Archers. Lack of mobility hurt him quite badly. He had an amazing direct push, but obviously his eco collapsed after all those raids, and then the army just got absolutely slaughtered by the Knights. The Knight numbers never were spectacular for Demon Sheep, but 300 HP on those Knights is not a joke. And with that, Kyo Fallen moves into the top 8, eliminating Capoch, Hera, and MarineLord.